Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, welcome. If you are a returning visitor, a subscriber, and or follower on the various alternative sites, I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support.
Starting things off, guys, or at least trying to start things off, the search feature on YouTube isn't working. But suffices to say this, if you have been following the channel since 2019, then you guys know that we started covering the Hong Kong protest back in 2019. That was in October. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because if you are just coming to the BuzWeaver channel for the first time, I try to keep everybody right on the cutting edge of information. We take the complicated, we try to make it simple, but more importantly, try to bring you guys up to date on what exactly is going on, some of the important features, some of the news stories, the headlines that are going on. So back in October of 2019, we started covering the Hong Kong protest, which was vitally important. And back then, as I magnify this a bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. So back in October, we were on top of the Hong Kong protest. And then around November, we started hearing rumors. We started hearing speculation, trickles, about a mysterious illness coming out of Wuhan, or at least out of mainland China, very close to Hong Kong, which would have been Shenzhen. But, of course, this was coming from Wuhan. But nonetheless, I wanted to stay on top of that, just the Hong Kong protest as well as this mysterious illness, because, ironically enough, every 20 years, we have these sorts of illnesses that can come out, and of course we don't always know how severe or significant they're going to be, but suffice it to say now, after 2 years, we realize the importance and the significance of what actually happened. So we're going to bring this forward here to the present in just a moment, but I wanted you guys to see this. Now, back when we started covering this was January the 25th, and this was now, at this point we had now heard that there was in fact illnesses. At the point now, it was at 1,438 with 42 deaths and 39 recovered. These are very tiny numbers. This was kind of why the mainstream media and even Nancy Pelosi were still dancing, or she was still there in Chinatown dancing around. That is her district there in San Francisco, because they saw these numbers. And these can't be entirely accurate out of Wuhan because we didn't really know. But of course, after a short period of time, as these numbers started increasing, then they started, obviously curtailing their media, as well as kicking all the media out of China. At the time, they were just telling all the media from foreign countries to get out, because that's the way China works. Because in their culture, of course, they have a thing called face, and if they lose face, then obviously it's an embarrassment to them. So this is why it's important, if you haven't subscribed already to the channel, to do that. And of course, if you haven't liked already, go ahead and smash that like button, because we try to keep you here on the cutting edge of information right here on the BuzWeaver channel. We take the difficult, we take the complicated, we take the mysterious, and we try to put it into context, because all of these industries out there are trying to vie for your attention, trying to get those clicks, and they can confuse things. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It is, as of this recording, January the 27th. This article is from the 25th. Dutch mayor warns the country is heading for civil war following violent anti-curfew protest, as France and Italy admit they're facing another illness lockdown. Europe in the midst of chaos. Uh-oh, I said the word. So if the video goes silent, I may have to go in and make some changes later. But nonetheless, chaos, and countries race to tighten their restrictions aimed high case numbers. All right, guys, lockdown, mask. Now here in the United States, they're talking about double masking, triple masking, quadruple masking. So it's just, at what point do we realize that we're descending into madness as we discuss this particular illness that has been going on now for 2 years, or at least since the coverage here on the channel for at least 2 years. But here we can see that in Europe, they are descending into civil war, at least from this particular Dutch mayor. But we have seen the videos, we have seen the pictures and images that are coming out of Europe. It's one thing for people to cooperate and get along, and then there's a point to where you're just like using it for whatever personal measures and reasons and control that you want to utilized. That is a huge spike there in Israel. I haven't really looked at these particular numbers. As I'm kind of looking at it at the same time you are now, but I hadn't gotten this far in the article. I just had read the top, of course, and just said really obviously just wanted to use the intro there for the introduction. But as you can see here, Europe was always the model for the rest of the world because, of course, the United States was constantly looking at Europe because, of course, at the time, President Trump was the president, and anything the president did was just wrong. And, you know, they always had to do the opposite of what the president was doing. So we see here that the UK is now, the UK is now leading the US, and this is in vaccinations, but wow, Israel's really doing well with vaccinations. So you can see here just some of these images that are going on, the people out protesting, which will get bigger and bigger and bigger. You guys may remember the yellow coats there in France when Macron wanted to raise gas prices for climate. So here we are. So now we're 2 years later, and China now claims that the illness started in a U.S. lab. So responding to Mike Pompeo's recent claims that the illness might have accidentally escaped from a Wuhan lab, China pushed back with its own conspiracy theories. Now, see, it's okay if China wants to engage in conspiracy theories. That's totally fine because it's China and they're able to do that. A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry said that the biological lab at Fort Detrick should be investigated as a potential source of the illness pandemic. Okay, so basically what China is trying to say is that either the United States was developing this and they were doing so in their Wuhan lab because, of course, if you take a look at the map of the United States, Fort Detrick is in Maryland. It's actually right over here. I had it marked. I don't know what happened. Oh, I closed the thing out. But anyway, so Fort Detrick is right over here in this area right here in Baltimore, Maryland, which is in Washington, D.C. But our very first case of the illness was in Washington State, which is all the way on the opposite side of the United States. So in fairness and exercising objectivity, it may be fair to say that the Chinese were trying to suggest that perhaps the United States was developing this particular illness to weaponize it, which is interesting because it's always important to remember that people typically operate from a position of their knowledge and experience. So sometimes when they are speaking to you, they're actually speaking from their own perspective and from their own, ways to express themselves. And things about what they may be accusing others of is actually what they do themselves. So when China says that this was developed in the United States to possibly be weaponized, then it could be understood that China may have used this or took the opportunity to weaponize it. But of course, that is purely speculation on my part. I'm just trying to throw things out there for you guys to kind of get some levels of perspective. So here we have BuzzFeed's news. I don't know why I said it that way. I was trying to say two things at the same time. But what's interesting about this is when I cover conventions with my press credentials, people ask me where am I from, and I say the BuzWeaver channel, and I say, oh, you work with BuzzFeed? No, I don't work with BuzzFeed at all. So here's what President Biden's COVID-19 travel ban bans mean for you. Now, of course, thankfully we have people like BuzzFeed to tell us what things mean, because if it wasn't for them telling us what things mean, then we'd have no idea, right? So then you'd have to come to either BuzzFeed news, or you'd have to come here to the BuzWeaver channel so I can tell you what things mean, apparently. Biden extended COVID-19 travel restrictions for most of Europe, the UK, Ireland, and Brazil, while also ending Trump's Muslim travel ban. Now, I want you to pay close attention to the language here. So it starts off with Trump's Muslim travel ban. But as we come down here, in his first week in office, President Joe Biden has reimposed a host of illness travel restrictions, although I've already said the word several times, while also repealing Trump's discriminatory Muslim ban. So we moved from Muslim travel ban, which those are countries that are known for practicing Islam, but why would they define it that way? Why would they say it this way? And then to punctuate it with discriminatory. The actions mean the U.S. will now start allowing visitors from predominantly Muslim and African countries who were previously restricted from entering the U.S. under Trump. At the same time, Biden is extending virus, I'm going to have to edit that out, related travel restrictions for most travel from Europe, the UK, Ireland, Brazil, while also adding South Africa to the list. Now, here's the curious thing. South Africa is actually on the ban. So they say Muslim countries. South Africa is not known, obviously, for practicing Islam as much as these other countries, but that's just kind of the language that's being used here, of course, because anything that's opposite of the president or the former president, of course, is what apparently the Democrats and the left always like to do. Whatever the opposite of what the president did, they did. So Biden keeps illness travel restrictions from Europe and Brazil, adds South Africa. So he's adding South Africa to the restrictions, which technically would not necessarily be considered a Muslim country. So you see how they play with the language. President Biden on Monday signed a directive maintaining illness travel restrictions on most of Europe and Brazil after former President Trump moved to roll them back just days before he left office. So the president was going to open things back up a bit, but obviously exercising precautions. But the reason the original Muslim ban was put into place is because these countries like Somalia, Ethiopia, and in other parts of, or even Iran, for example, of course, are known for their terrorist activities. And it isn't so much, it is, of course, they can see, because it's all about the language and definition and defining language. You could either say it's precautionary because of COVID-19, or you could say because of President Trump being a bigot, racist, Islamophobe. So you see, pick your side. Pick your side. If it's the left, it's peaceful protesting. If it's the right, it's insurrection. You see, pick your language, pick your sides. This is why hate speech would never work in this country. Because the tribes will be pointing at each other and saying, that's hateful, that's hateful. A MAGA hat, a MAGA shirt is considered hate. U.S. states ease illness restrictions just as variants take hold. So what were we just talking about? Whatever President Trump did, the Democrats did the opposite. And now that President Trump isn't here, they realize how important it is to get business and industry going again, because the economy is tanking. The economy is really, really, really hurting very badly here in the United States. And sometimes even Democrats have to make the hard choice of doing the right thing. Think about that for a moment. It takes an absolute desperate hardship for the Democrats to sometimes do the right thing, and that is to ease the restrictions. And ironically enough, we're ending kind of where we started back in Washington, where the initial illness started. Or, well, maybe not in Seattle, but in Washington State. And so we've come full circle in this Friday vlog of the original time. And I'm glad I kept some of this material because, of course, you guys are very astute. You guys are very clever. You guys know that I'm on top of this kind of stuff. So this is, of course, a very important reason to always stay here and subscribe and like and share. You'll be hearing me probably say that more often this year. So I'm sure you guys will become accustomed to it. So right now, today, we're seeing the Dutch talk about civil war as a result of all this that's going down. And you can only go so far with this. You can only go so far with this particular illness before people start to realize, okay, we're willing to make sacrifices. We're willing to make changes. We're willing to wear a mask. We're willing to do this. We're willing to that. But there's a certain point where it just all breaks down. And of course, the WHO has already mentioned that, or that would be the World Health Organization, has already mentioned that lockdowns should be a last resort. And so it may be fair to say that the Democrats finally realized, just like when they sent in the National Guard in the Washington area, or areas that were obviously experiencing riots or peaceful protest as they're defined, versus insurrection and, of course, a coup. All depends on the language. But nonetheless, guys, here we are, United States 2 years later, and we have a new president, and we're seeing an ease in restrictions.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you so very much for the likes, the shares, and the comments. All of you guys that are on Alt Tech, your guys' participation is always appreciated as well. Thank you for the follows on all of the particular alt sites. You can find them below this video. And of course, I'm sure many of you, like me, are waiting for Parlay to return, so let's hope that that will come very soon. For those of you here on YouTube, of course, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe. Click on that and you'll get a series of options to click on, for example, notifications. That way you guys will know when there's content here on the channel, as well as the Friday vlog. And I will see you guys right there behind that camera next week.